Hello, this is a brief video for helping you figure out how to log into the computer science undergraduate cluster for intermediate programming. And in this video, I'll show you how to do this on a few different operating systems. I'll show you first on the Mac, then I'll show you on Linux, and then I'll show you on Windows. So first thing to think about is what kind of account do you have on the computer science undergraduate cluster. So the first thing I want to show you is that if you're already affiliated with computer science, which is to say if you're a computer science major, then one thing you probably have already done, but if you haven't yet, then check out what I'm doing here. I'm going to the computer science website, going under Ask CS, IT Support, CS IT Support Wiki, and then I'm scrolling down, and under categories I'm going to select accounts, and there's information here about how to apply for your permanent undergraduate Linux cluster account if you have a CS affiliation, for example, if you're a CS major. And if you are a CS major, then I do recommend you go through this process because it's better to have a permanent account than to use temporary accounts every semester. Once you have a permanent account, for example, your username and your home directory will be persistent from semester to semester. But for many people, they are not necessarily computer science majors, in which case one of the things you had to do was fill out this form that we had in class. So you filled out this form front and back and signed it. And one of the things that was on this form were your username and password down here. I've covered the password in this case, but here's the username and here's where the password would be. So you filled out this form front and back and you noted down that username and password, and that is what you will use at first to log into the computer science undergraduate cluster. So let's start. Let's go ahead and log into the undergraduate cluster on the Mac. And so on the Mac, as well as on Linux, we're going to use a command prompt or a shell to log into the undergraduate cluster. So here I am on my Mac. I'm going to run terminal. So if you don't already know how to run terminal, you can always just go up here to Spotlight and search for it. All right, so here's my terminal. And I've got a little prompt here with a blinking cursor, and it's just waiting for me to type in commands. So the very first command that I'm going to type in here is an SSH command. SSH stands for Secure Shell. This is what you will use to log into the undergraduate cluster. This is the basic program you'll use to log in. I'm going to put dash lowercase l. Then I'm going to put my username, and I'm going to use a temporary account in this case, so I'm reading this username off of my form. That's my username. And then a space, and now I'm going to put the name of the cluster computer that I want to log into. And there's 24 different cluster computers. They're called ugrad 1, ugrad 2, ugrad 3, ugrad 4, etc., all the way up to ugrad 24.cs.jhu.edu. So I'm going to log into ugrad 24. For your work for this class, it basically doesn't matter which one you log into. You can log into any of them. So I'm going to press enter. Okay, now I get this prompt that says authenticity of host blah blah can't be established, etc. You will sometimes see this message. Do not be alarmed. All it really means is that the very first time you log into a computer from some other computer, you will get this message saying basically these computers have not met each other before. That's fine. When it says, are you sure you want to continue connecting, just type yes. Now it's going to add it to the list of known hosts. In other words, it's never going to ask you that again. And now it's asking you to type in your password. So let me type in my password. Oops, I made a mistake. Let me try again. Made another mistake. There we go. So now I've logged in. This is the welcome message that I'm seeing here. It indicates that I've now logged into the machine. And now I've got another prompt. It looks a little bit different. So now it's got, you can see ugrad 24 here in the prompt indicating that I've logged in. And this is a shell prompt on one of the undergraduate cluster machines. And now I can start to enter the sorts of commands that, if you're not already familiar with them, that we'll learn about throughout this semester. So for example, one of the commands, pwd, is a command that if you type it in and press enter, it tells you what directory you're in. This is the name of a directory. Or if I type ls, it lists all the files that are in my current directory, which happens to be my home directory. I can even take a look at one of these files. So here's a file called readme first that the nice CSIT folks have put there for me. So let me do more readmefirst.txt, and it shows me the contents of that file, and I can sort of leaf through that file. Okay, so if you have a temporary account, and I am using a temporary account right now, then one of the very first things you should do when you log into one of the undergraduate cluster machines is you should change your password. And the way to change your password is using the command passwd, just like this. All right? So if you want to change your password, you have to enter your old password. Then that gives you a menu. You have to select 1 and then press enter from that menu, indicating you want to change your password. Then it prompts you to enter your current password, and then it prompts you to enter a new password twice. I'm going to cancel out of that because I don't want to change my password right now. So that's the first thing you should do when you log in. So there you go. That's a little primer on how to log in from the Mac. I'll show you one more thing. Well, first of all, I want to show you how to exit this session, which is to just type exit, hit enter. Okay. Now I'm no longer logged into the undergraduate cluster. My prompt looks again, it looks different. It looks again like I'm on my local machine. And I just want to show you that a different way, this is the command that I used before to log in. I can change the command a little bit. Instead of doing -L followed by the username, I can just type the username followed by an @ like that. So this is just a synonym for the same command that I put in before. All right, it's asking me for my password. And there I am, I'm logged in again. So there's a quick tutorial on how to log in from the Mac. Now let me show you how to do it from Linux. So I'm still running my Mac, but on my Mac I have something called VirtualBox, which lets me run virtual machines. And this is a virtual machine that has Ubuntu Linux installed. So everything you see in this window here is Linux. So I'm just going to show you, try to log in. I'm just going to show you how to do this from Linux. So from Linux you want to use the terminal program. All right, so you want to get a nice prompt like this, a shell prompt on your local machine. And then again, you want to use the SSH command just like we did before. And in fact, everything here is going to look exactly the same. So here we go. I'll log into ugrad 10 this time. It could be anything 1 through 24. There's just 24 different computers you can log into. So I'd hit enter. And again, this is the first time this particular computer has talked to that particular computer. So I'm going to get this prompt saying the authenticity couldn't be established. So now I'm just going to type yes to this prompt. Now they've met each other, so I'm never going to get that prompt again, at least when I'm connecting from this computer to that computer. And now I'm being asked to enter my password. Except I made a mistake. And now I'm logged in. So it's pretty much exactly the same thing if you're doing it from Mac as if you're doing it from Linux. So I promised I would show you Mac and Linux and Windows. So now let me do Windows. So this is Windows 10, and again I'm running it in a virtual machine. So this window here is showing you Windows 10. With Windows, we're going to use a different kind of program to SSH into the undergraduate cluster. We're going to use a program called PuTTY, and I'm not going to assume you already have PuTTY installed, so I'm going to show you how to install it. So I'm going to go to Internet Explorer, and then I'm going to go to putty.org. Okay, download PuTTY. You can download PuTTY here. I'm going to click that. Scroll down, and then depending on whether you have a 32 or 64-bit version of Windows, I have a 64-bit, so I'm going to click this. If you have a 32-bit, click that, but I'm going to click here. It's going to say, what do I want to do? I'm going to say I want to save it, and now it's downloading. running its security scan. And now it's done. I'm going to press run here. And that runs the installer. So here's the PuTTY installer. I'm going to hit next. I'm going to use the default location. And I am going to ask it to put a shortcut on the desktop. I'm going to press install. Say yes. And there it goes. And now I'm done. Close this. So here's PuTTY. So now let me run PuTTY. And you can see it's got a more visual interface than what we were doing before. But it's the same idea. I'm still going to SSH into one of those undergraduate hosts. So let's put in the name ugrad. I'll put in 15 this time. .cs.jgu.edu. The other settings here are correct on their defaults. So by default, it's got SSH highlighted. That's correct. By default, it's got port 22. That's correct. So I'm going to go ahead and do open. And I get a message. The server's host key is not cached in the registry. That's just the same idea as the message we were getting before, saying these computers haven't met each other yet. So if you press yes, then you won't get that message again for this pair of computers. Now it's asking me log in as. In other words, it wants to know my username. I'm going to type in my temporary account username. What's my password? And now I've got the same familiar welcome message here. I've got the same familiar prompt here. I can do my favorite commands like pwd and ls and more, readme first, etc. So this looks and feels exactly the same as what we saw under Linux and Windows, but it's happening, I'm sorry, under Linux and Mac, but it's using PuTTY on Windows. So I'm going to exit. Now I want to show you one last thing that saves you a little bit of time. So if I go back into PuTTY, now what I want to do is, again, I want to type the name of one of the undergraduate cluster machines in here. And now I'm going to go over here, I'm going to go under connection and select data. And one of the boxes here is asking for my username. And this is basically now an opportunity for me to tell it once and for all what my username is, so it doesn't keep asking me. So I'm going to put my username in there. I'm going to go back to session. And then I'm going to save all of these settings. You know, the host name and the username, I'm going to save them. I'm going to give it a short name, ugrad2, and I'm going to click save. And now I've got a saved session here called ugrad2. So now I can even leave PuTTY and come back in. ugrad2 is still there. So if I want to recall those settings, I'll just do load. And now you can see that's filled in. That's filled in. So I can do open. And it'll skip entering the username. It already knows my username because I saved it in the profile. And I can log in a little bit quicker that way. Okay? So those are the basics of SSHing into the undergraduate cluster machines. So in future videos, we'll talk about things like copying files to those machines and things like that.